You're now listening to Sanity at the Movies, Stargazing Edition. That's right, folks. We got through the entire, what would you call it? The Lucasiad.
Yeah.
Look, I don't care for Lucasiad at all, but what would you call the oeuvre?
Let's see.
The Lucas... Lucasian...
The Lucas Hexiad.
The Lucas, we got through the entire Lucas, is a Hexiad 6?
I hope so. I'm checking.
A hexagon has 6 sides? Is that what we're going off of here?
Yeah.
We're remembering that hex is Latin or whatever for hex?
I think I made Hexiad up, but,
Well, what would you call 6 movies done by George Lucas? That's the question. Listeners, tweet at Jake, because he's still on Twitter, at Jacob Menzel. What's the hashtag? Lucasfilm name tweet. Hashtag Lucasfilm name tweet.
That'll be, we'll get a lot of tweets about that.
Well, what you think, or go to the Sanityville forums, wherever you want to, or send us an email through the warhornmedia.com link. Tell us what you think the 6 movies directed, conceived, produced by George Lucas should be called. Anyway, we're moving out of those, and we're not going to go straight to your Force Awakens, because we're kind of following a rough chronology here. Although not exactly, because this one comes before one of the first movies we talked about. But we decided to place Rogue One at this place in the order of what we are going to talk about. Which, by the way, Jake, you say that this was the correct order to watch the movies, right? Like, this has been borne out by the way your kids have appreciated them, the way that you've appreciated them, watching them again.
I don't know. I think that there's still maybe a case for sticking Rogue One and Solo prior to the original trilogy.
So you actually start with those? That's the only problem is then you're starting with those, and I have a problem with that. I don't like starting with those.
Yeah.
I could see this. I could see New Hope, and then Solo and Rogue One, and then Empire, and then prequels.
Yeah, no, I think that this is the right way to do it. Because the fact is, I mean, like, especially if you're introducing somebody to it. But I also think
you wouldn't want to do Lion the Witch and then Magician's Nephew. I don't think you kind of want to give it some space. You actually want people to appreciate Rogue One, which means you want them to feel how resonant it is, which means you want them to kind of have lived with the meaningfulness of the original trilogy, and then
everything that's happening has all this gravity to it.
You just watch Rogue One out of nowhere. You're like, oh well, they died to transmit some plans. Great, I hope that works out.
Yeah, but then you flip on A New Hope, and it picks up right where Rogue One left off, and so you just continue that dramatic tension.
Okay, so maybe you're on a desert island. The only thing you have to do is watch Star Wars movies. Your life is this empty. Maybe the perfect way to do it is this: 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6. Rogue One, 4 again.
Yeah, maybe.
So it's like you were watching a new movie.
Yeah, there you go.
You know who?
I love it.
Who, and then you watch Force Awakens. You lucky dog.
Well, yeah, and then you get to see the poetic parallelism of
coming right off of
and A New Hope, and it'd be like watching the same movie 3 times.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. And which one of the 3 times will be the one that you like the best? It says a lot about you, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Do you like A New Hope without knowing any of the context? Do you like A New Hope with the context, or do you like A New Hope
repackaged as a new movie?
Repackaged as a new movie with a girl.
Feminist.
With a feminist. Well, I want to time.
You're a feminist if that's the one you like.
If that's the one you like, you're a feminist.
Shots fired, baby.
Shots fired. But let's talk about
Rogue One.
Rogue One. What do you remember about approaching this movie, Jake? Do you remember having any particular excitement or anticipation? This movie's...
When it was in theaters?
Yeah, when it was in theaters.
Yeah. I had excitement and anticipation, and I went with a group of guys who took their sons. We were all still excited about the Disney film era of Star Wars.
A manly father. Let the testosterone flow through you.
Yeah, man.
Manly father-son bonding experience.
Yeah, so I remember taking my oldest son to a Star Wars movie with a whole bunch of other guys and kids. I remember sitting in the theater. I remember somebody else's kid being beside me who had never been to a Star Wars movie before.
Oh, there you go.
And I was waiting to jump him when the title crawl fanfare hit, and it didn't. but I was gonna like startle him.
But I wish you would have, because they actually do it. They do it as a jump scare. Like, it's actually a jump scare in this movie that there's no title crawl. It's like, bump! They do the music like, hey, you thought there was a title crawl, idiot.
Yeah, I know,
Gotcha. But
it got me.
It got you, yeah.
Like, I wasn't like ready for that.
You were cowering in your seat. You were too...
It's not exactly what I meant. But I mean, I was ready to like shock him with the, the title crawl.
Yeah.
And then whoosh.
Yeah.
It was more like a whoosh, wasn't it? I don't know. Anyhow,
no, they actually do.
It caught me off guard.
Old Michael Giacchino, or however you say his name, the composer of this movie, he actually does jump scare music. It's just like, bump! It's this little big brassy orchestral hit. I'm going to surprise you, which I thought was really smart, actually, watching it this time. But
we'll have to talk about the score at some point, because...
You know what? We're old friends, and our listeners are friends. Why don't we talk about the score now? What the heck? We don't have to go in chronological order.
Well, I remember thinking when I saw the movie in theaters that, you know what? These were nice allusions and riffs on John and hat tips to Williams' original score while giving it a different flavor. I kind of appreciated. Oh, are we going into, like a binary sunset Jedi music kind of thing? Nope, we're not. Are we going into the triumphant fanfare? Oh, nope, we're not.
We got our own dorky little fanfare.
Yeah, but it works.
I really like it, and I've heard a lot of nerds express displeasure about this.
I don't know that you could do a better job if your goal was, you are not John Williams.
Right.
You're not allowed to use John Williams's music, but it has to feel like this exists in John Williams's world. Well,
the thing that's really smart about it, I think, and having watched the films so close together, it helps. A New Hope actually feels like it exists slightly outside of John Williams' universe of themes, because they just weren't all written. You have like the Jedi theme, the Force theme, the main fanfare, but you don't have the Imperial March. The bad guys have a much more subdued, brassy bad guy theme.
Yeah,
Star Wars as a vocabulary of musical themes wasn't very developed.
And so this feels like a precursor.
It actually does. And I appreciate
the seed form of what was going to become the...
It's really smart, actually. And I think, and he doesn't press those buttons that you might expect. When Vader shows up in his palace, we do get a little bit of the Vader theme. But when he's mowing down those guys, we don't get the Vader theme. That's really cool. Like, we don't...
I love the music in that.
Yeah, it's
at
just...
that moment. And in fact, it never occurred to me that it should be like the Imperial March in that moment.
Well, I think that would be the cliched thing to do. Like, this is the ultimate expression of
the moment
Darth Vader's
in and of
evil.
Itself. It just didn't need to happen.
Yeah, I think the music's great, and I think people that whine about it are like, what did you want? The composer has an impossible task. John Williams, was alive when electricity was invented. Like, the guy's 1,000 years old. He can't keep writing scores for Star Wars movies forever. So the composer has a choice. He can either lean into Williams and find a way to riff on what Williams has done, which is what he did, or he can lean away from it, and you can get electric guitars like in some of that cheesy early Clone Wars stuff.
Yep.
And I don't think anybody would have been happy with that.
No, nobody was going to be happy with anything.
Yeah, he had an impossible task.
Yeah.
Live up to the maestro. I mean, John Williams, the greatest film composer maybe of all time, certainly of the 20th century, which comprises most of film history.
Yep.
I mean, one of probably the greatest composers, just period, outside of, film or no, of the 20th century. You got to live up to that, and you got to pay homage to that, and people are going to be noticing it. Like, I don't always think about the music in movies, but in this movie, the first time I saw it,
it was impossible not to think about it.
You couldn't think, oh, they're not using the Imperial March here. You keep hearing what they're not doing. And when they do it, when they do just use the Rebel fanfare, when the good guys show up at the end, when the Alliance shows up, you notice that too, because it's conspicuous by its absence elsewhere. 2 thumbs up from Sanity at the Movies for this score.
Oh, yeah.
Good job, Giacchino. You can continue to score more Star Wars movies, as far as I'm concerned. I think Williams is going to be around. I hate to talk this callously about this, but I think he will. I think he has officially scored Rise of the Skywalker. So he lived. I mean, he's in his 80s or 90s now.
I think that's the retirement of.
He doesn't want to start a new trilogy like the Ryan Johnson's trilogy. Doesn't deserve to have the great John Williams.
Yeah,
John Williams has already scored one too many Ryan Johnson movies with The Last Jedi. Yeah, no, I think the score is a win. Let's talk about Rogue One, though, if people don't know, this is a famously troubled production. Tony Gilroy, he's the director of films like Michael Clayton, and he's like a famous Hollywood script doctor, script writer. That's what he's most known for, is just doing screenwriting work. And he wrote movies like all 4 of the original Bourne movies through the Jeremy Renner one, Bourne Legacy, which he actually directed. And so he's just like a master of structure, and, like there's nothing particularly original about a Bourne movie, but they're clever and they're fun and they're well-paced, and he's good at that stuff. So he's the guy that came in and apparently salvaged this movie. And some reports say up to 40% of the movie was reshot, redone under Gilroy's hand. The original guy that did it, maybe I should have started with him. His name is Gareth Edwards. He directed the Godzilla movie. He comes from special effects, and I think you can tell. And I think it's one of the benefits of this movie. He knows. Yep. You can tell. It
is the most beautifully shot Star Wars movie. Period. I don't care what you say.
Well, I think that's true, and I think what you can see is a guy who came from special effects, who's had to work on other people's special effects, and probably has just given a lot of thought to, what do I want my special effects to look like? How do I think directors should be using my special effects? Like I put all this work into these special effects, and then somebody edited them together this way, and it didn't show them off in the best way. It's that kind of, it's like when, Tina Fey's been writing on Saturday Night Live for her whole life, and then suddenly she's going to have her own show with 30 Rock or something. It's like she's been thinking a lot about what does she think comedy should be, and now she's going to, it's one of those
guys. She's going to show the world.
She's going to show the world. And so I think what you see, the thing that I noticed, especially watching it this time, there's a thing that I really don't like, and I call it the Peter Jackson thing. I guess I don't call it anything. I don't have a name for it, but I think of it as a Peter Jackson thing. I remember first noticing it in Fellowship of the Ring and those stupid Lord of the Rings movies, which I like, by the way. But the camera will swoop around and do all these things like, it's Saruman's palace. We're going to suddenly swoop down into the cavern.
Yeah.
And the camera does all these things that cameras can't do.
Yeah.
And to me, that always screams CGI. And that was a big thing for a couple of years after Jackson. But then we started doing things where
it felt more realistic.
Let's shoot the special effects. I think even like an Avengers movie at their worst can fall into this. Like, we're going to swoop around and see everybody in a way,
spin around the Avengers in a
way that we wouldn't actually be able to see them. But the kind of special effects that I think are really cool, and that obviously Gareth Edwards thought a lot about this, is let's just shoot it on the ground as we would see it. So, for example, there's that shot where they're approaching, is it Jeddah? Is that the name of the city? Or is it
Jeddah City.
Jeddah City. They're approaching Jeddah City, and we look up and we see the Star Destroyer looming over the city. And it's powerful because it evokes me standing next to the Empire State Building, or me on the West Coast looking at a big, one of those battleships. When you actually come across something in real life, you look up at it, and he shoots it that way.
It's a perspective on a Star Destroyer that we've actually never seen before.
Right.
We've had 6 movies up to this point, or 7 up to this point, and we have never seen this on the ground imposing perspective of a Star Destroyer.
Right.
Nothing like it before. And this movie's full of moments like that.
Same thing with the most famous one from the movie that was in all the posters, the Death Star looming in the horizon.
The Death Star in the horizon. What would it be like to be on the planet when the Death Star shows up?
Yeah.
Like, how cool was that? And the even great allusions to Peter Jackson type work from the very outset, flying into different places and seeing, Jedis carved into mountains or fallen. You can't even really tell. Like, is it a Jedi laying down that was carved into a mountain, or is this a fallen massive fallen statue?
Like what's the Shelley poem? Ozymandias. Yeah. Well, actually, Jackson did it. I mean, to give Jackson a little bit of credit, we talk about that moment all the time. One of the best, probably the best moment from all 3 Lord of the Rings movies is when they sail under those 2 big stone guys with
Fellowship
with their hands out.
Yep.
And it's shot as if you're standing under the Statue of Liberty, as if you're standing as if you're sailing under this thing, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah, the big stone feet right there. That's a moment that the first time I saw it, I won't forget that feeling. It was super evocative. It was super cool. It really helped make that world feel lived in. And that's what, coming away from Rogue One, seeing it in theaters, I was so excited. It is the only Star Wars movie I've ever purchased. Because I was just, I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah, you're just getting dropped on the ground in
So
the
much
Star
eye
Wars
candy.
world.
You felt like, hey, for the first time, this is really what it would feel like to be me, a normal person in this world. And it was just such a neat feeling. I think that more than anything is what had me excited about Rogue One.
Yeah,
when it first came out.
And that's great. And it's all through the movie. And it's just, there's actually very few shots. I started paying attention and watching for it. There's very few shots that are just the big grand establishing shot. There's one or two of the Death Star. I think that's it. Mostly it's just like, this is what the characters would be seeing. It's from the ground level. And it just, even when you're in the jungle and the ATTs are looming over and searching for you, at every point, it places you in the middle of the action on the ground in a way that's really cool.
Yeah.
And brings that universe to life.
And in a lot of the places, like the other thing that I think is cool is even when it comes to the places where they shot this stuff, so many of the Star Wars movies are trying to set you in a place that feels otherworldly. And this movie did the opposite.
Yeah.
I know that like the very first opening shot, we're running down a beach, but it feels like with the black earth feels like you're in the Midwest. I don't know. Is this in Florida now? Like so many of these little places they have those otherworldly elements. They have, the weird features.
Right.
And the weird people and whatever else. But also it was expanding on the world.
Right.
It was expanding on the atmospherics of this universe.
Well, and part of the fun of the original Lucas movies was we're going to make a whole planet out of this place from Earth, our Earth. That's neat. So we've got the redwood forests. We'll make the forest moon of Vendor. It's like, okay, that's the Californian redwood.
Now we have,
This is the Californian redwood planet. Cool.
Yeah. Then we have the Antarctica planet.
And it's just taking things that are recognizable. And I mean, it's doing what great fantasy should do, actually, which is to take the recognizable and reframe it in such a way that it becomes fantastic again, that it becomes, that it triggers your imagination. The first time you see snow, it triggers your imagination. Then you have to like wipe off your car and deal with snow for the next decades of your life. And suddenly snow isn't that magical. You make a snow planet, though, and suddenly you give adults and kids permission to regard snow as big and fantastic and scary and magical the way that someone seeing snow. That's what fantasy does, and that's what this does. The jungle kind of area that they fight the last battle, in this movie, the last third, the heist, the tropical. To me, it feels like a World War II Pacific Theater
absolutely
thing, but it's taking, you watch that old Pacific Theater footage and it's like, that's a corny old iconic thing I've seen a million times. Doesn't do much for me. They're just giving it to me again. They're reframing it in a way.
But with stormtroopers and death troopers.
And death troopers, yeah, I love those.
The death troopers are pretty cool.
Yep. So
how do you make something more ominous in Star Wars? You reshape the armor just a little bit, put some red highlights on it, and make everything they say more indiscernible.
Yep. And call them death something.
And add the word death.
The Empire has like a real creative team of Imagineers working in the concepts division.
The Death Star, Death Troopers, Storm Troopers.
We already used death, so maybe Star Killer? The Star Killer?
Because it kills stars as it...
You know what? I like to think that the people that work in the conceptual design and creative divisions of the Empire, they're probably actually really good at their job, and probably the bureaucrats like Director Krennic choose the dumbest things. They probably had a really cool name for the Death Star, for the Death Troopers. Yeah. And I'm like, just make it more scary. We need something. This will test well with audiences.
Project Stardust.
Yeah, Project Stardust. Yeah, Krennic doesn't let his project get called Project Stardust. Project Doom.
Death Doom Die.
Death Doom Die. Exactly. Well, so to close the loop on what got us here, Gareth Edwards is obviously a director who's thought a lot about how to present these things visually, and it's really powerful what he does. He actually does the same thing. Did you ever see his Godzilla movie, the Godzilla 2014 or whatever? I
don't think so, no.
It's not great. It's pretty boring, but the scenes with Godzilla, as you might imagine, are good, and it's because he does the exact same thing. He shoots it like as if you're there and you're seeing Godzilla, And it's really cool. There's a scene in particular that I remember that takes place like at an airport, and it's looking out those windows like you've done as a kid a million times, gone and looked out the window and seen the planes. Instead, you're seeing a monster rampaging, and just framing it with the window, the big giant window frame to look through, does so much for Godzilla's mystique and power and majesty.
Well, and playing on that, I mean, I've taken kids to the airport for fun to watch planes and just sit at those big windows before.
Yeah.
Because I remember as a kid when we'd fly out to Phoenix every summer to visit grandparents, and I remember, how cool that was. And we don't have occasion for my family to fly places, but we can go sit in the airport and get lunch, and that's cool.
Well, so somebody like Gareth Edwards, I think he'll probably consciously or unconsciously, he'll think, we've all done that. We've all been awed at the majesty of looking through this kind of window and seeing a big airplane. So what a way to frame Godzilla. It's going to trigger these childhood things, and it's going to make Godzilla seem that much bigger. And if Godzilla is smashing planes and stuff, it's going to make, as opposed to the unimaginative hack director who just shoots a wide helicopter shot that just looks down on Godzilla and sees all the destruction. And it might be a better special effect. It might show you more, but seeing more isn't actually what you want. It doesn't actually make you feel like you're there with Godzilla. And so he's really, really, really good at that stuff. He obviously gave that to this movie. I don't know what happened in terms of, nobody knows what happened. I did a little research going into this.
Secretive.
Lucasfilm pays people off. They paid Gilroy, who came in and did whatever he did to fix the movie. They paid him a substantial sum of money. I think he made $5 million, and he got a screenplay credit, which is very interesting because the Guild doesn't like to just award screenplay credits to people who do a little brush up. And he was coming in and working on a completed film. So what it seems like probably bears out the idea that he did a lot. People say he did about 40%. And if he's going to get a screenplay credit, it probably means he did do something like that. And it's fun to guess at what the original stuff was and what the not original stuff was. The only thing that Gilroy's gone on record and said is we needed to be more anchored emotionally to the characters. So it wouldn't surprise me if her little doodad that she looks at 2 or 3 times and some of her flashbacks and stuff like that are him. Just anything that makes the characters more likable and more relatable. Who knows? It's interesting. It's interesting to contemplate that they didn't have a good screenplay ready when they were done. And that's a common theme with these franchise films is, we made fun of Avengers for the fact that they actually had to discover in the editing room, oh, we should have Tony Stark say I'm Iron Man. How do you miss at least rejecting that in an early pass?
That was one of the first things that we talked about is he going to get his moment to say I am Iron Man or not? And you were like, of course he does. And I was like, no, it's too obvious.
Right. And they were like, we discovered that it would be cool if he did this it's like, guys.
It's like, it was missing something. It was like he needed to say something there at the end before he wiped out the bad guy. And then one of our editors was like, I know, he should say I am Iron Man. And then we had to do a reshoot a month before the film dropped in theaters.
Well, and what they actually said, I remember the quote, they said, what we realized is that Tony Stark, if he's going to die, he needs one last quip. You realized Tony Stark, the most famous quippy character of our era,
MCU,
if I say quips, people think Tony Stark. You realized he needed a quip in editing. Of course he needed a quip. That's his whole thing. This is a man who lives and dies by his mouth. That is Tony Stark. That is the character, and that's what we love about Robert Downey Jr. You didn't think to give him a quip? I could maybe forgive you for having a bad quip and needing to, or having multiple quips that you wanted to try out.
Yeah.
But the idea that you would get that far
without realizing that you needed it, that's pretty rough.
And so Rogue One, I don't know, similar thing. What happened, and why is this movie? Okay, here's my $1 million question, Jake. Is this a good movie?
It's a lot like it is to the Star Wars universe what a movie like Thor Ragnarok is to the MCU.
Which is what?
Maybe Thor Ragnarok's not the right pick, but just we'll roll with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a movie like Spider-Man Homecoming. Let's roll with Spider-Man Homecoming for a minute. I'll say that Spider-Man Homecoming is a good movie in and of itself, but a lot of the emotional resonance of Spider-Man Homecoming depends on you having a previous relationship to the universe, to Tony Stark in particular, a general affection towards the character that you know as Spider-Man, whether or not you've seen this version of him or not.
Well, let's just say this. RDJ's only in that movie for less than 10 minutes, and huge emotional things hinge on him. The big emotional movements of that movie hinge on his performance and what he does and his character and our knowledge of his character. You can still enjoy the movie and get what's going on maybe without, but...
And the coolest part of that movie really isn't the introduction of the titular character. It's the growth that we see in the MCU's main hero.
Right.
Into a father figure. So it just depends on all this other stuff. So what I guess what I'm saying is so many movies in the MCU, they wouldn't stand alone as a great film.
Mm-hmm.
But they have their place in the context of a larger universe, and they're part of that they're contributing to the story that is the whole. And so you tolerate from a Marvel movie what you would never tolerate from a standalone movie in terms of all kinds of things, because it's part of this greater whole that you've bought into or that you love or whatever. And you know it's all going somewhere and it's all going to pay off somewhere down the line. Well, Rogue One is similar in that if it didn't have Darth Vader in it, if it didn't have stormtroopers and lasers, stark black and white Nazi-like, if you take away what makes Star Wars, the stuff of Star Wars, you don't have a great movie.
I don't even know that you have a movie. It might almost be nonsensical. At least nobody would know why they needed to care about any of this, because they don't do a lot of work within the self-contained unit that is the movie, of telling you why any of this is important. My wife walked into this movie and she just did not understand. I wouldn't even say she's a casual fan. She's just not a fan of Star Wars. She literally turned to me and said, I don't understand. What she actually said is, this is just like Marvel movies. You have to watch everything to understand, and I don't understand this. And she's right.
Yeah, so it depends a lot on what you bring to it.
Right.
But like with Marvel movies, I don't fault a movie within a framework like this for depending on knowledge of the greater universe.
Right.
Because it's all part of a larger story that's being told in a larger ecosystem. I think that we ought to allow the directors and writers of these movies to be able to cheat and to lean on you bringing things to the movie. I'm not saying that we shouldn't expect and they shouldn't be striving to make these movies that are in and of themselves great movies. But I am saying that there ought to be places where we're allowed to use shorthand, we're allowed to make some assumptions here and there in order to allow us to advance and tell the actual story here that we're trying to tell.
Yeah, I think it took me a long time with Rogue One, because I got out of the movie and I was just like, wait a second. I was like, I really liked that actually. It made me cry. Like I felt all the Star Wars feels, but the other part of my brain is like, this isn't good. This actually isn't good. Like if you hold it up to any standard of what a traditional story should be in terms of plot and character and everything, it's just not good. And we can talk more about some of the stuff that's not good about it.
Yeah.
But it was like cognitive dissonance. Like my brain was fighting with itself. It feels good, but it's not good. And the it feels good part eventually won. What I realized was I was just being grumpy to hold this movie actually wasn't designed to adhere to the traditional standard. It was designed to adhere to a more, a more sort of metatextual standard. This movie was supposed to play with 40 years of Star Wars history.
That's right. And that's why it's become a fan favorite and why it's become the only movie that 40-year-old plus 35-year-old plus people really love. It's because it is the adult Star Wars movie that is metatextual and is playing with your 40 years of history that you bring to it and lore and whatever else you bring to it and desire to live in this world and experience it again like you did as a kid, but now as an adult, but with an adult feeling story and with Vader,
right?
And all that sort of thing, but in a way that actually gets you as an adult.
Yeah, let me make 35-year-old you feel how scary Vader felt the first time you saw him when you were 5. Let me redo that for you as an adult.
Let me make 35, 40, 45, 50-year-old you feel like this world, that a Star Destroyer is as big and imposing as it felt when you were 5.
Right.
Let me make this world feel as big and scary and who knows what could happen and dangerous as it felt to you as when you were a kid. Let's enter a torture octopus and a scary, creepy guy that makes Jabba feel tame.
Pretty tame. And
let's just like all of these elements, we're just going to ramp it up and make it adult and try to make you feel that, evoke those sorts of feelings. And I think that is why that movie tends to work for the older nerd crowd who that's the Star Wars that they want now, right? They want the adult Star Wars.
Well, and it's actually the Star Wars that they remember. That's the interesting thing. If you go back and watch the original Star Wars, it's like, this is really cheesy and plain and simple, but you don't remember it that way from when you're a kid. You remember that Mos Eisley, but you don't remember Mos Eisley Spaceport as being a bunch of guys in rubber masks at being cheesy and doing an Old West riff. You remember it as being a hive of scum and villainy. Yeah. So this movie actually presents adult scum and villainy in a way that you can feel as an adult, and it actually triggers more real Star Wars nostalgia by doing something that the original Star Wars never did, actually.
Yep.
You feel the moral complexity as a kid of Han just blasting Greedo away. You watch it as an adult, it's like, who cares? But then this movie is going to actually do that. You feel like Vader's scary as a kid, and then it's like, you watch it as an adult, okay, it's a dork in a robot costume. This movie's going to make Vader scary again.
Yeah.
So it's smart, and it doesn't. And what the other thing that I realized in preparing for this, I was thinking about it, there is actually a lot of literary and cultural precedent for things that only exist in relation to other things. Couple examples. Shakespeare assumes knowledge of British history. Like, you can't just go into a Henry play cold, or you can. I mean, Shakespeare's still a genius, but it certainly helps if you bring context to it. And if you already have your villains and your heroes picked, and you already know who's going to win the battle. Yep. And so you're just watching Shakespeare riff on that stuff, just like in this movie you're watching.
He's showing you how it happened.
Yeah, exactly. And he's saying this was the cost, and this was the feeling, and this was the funny stuff. But you already know how you feel about it. The other, probably the best example, and people always like to compare modern franchise filmmaking to this, but it's because it's a good comparison, is Greek myth. You know, you dip into Homer and it's like, you're supposed to know all these relationships. You're supposed to know all these heroes. Yeah. You're supposed to know everything about this. And Homer's just doing his riff on
stuff you
all
should
this
already
stuff.
know.
In fact, Homer's doing specifically in the Odyssey, he's doing something very much in this lineage where it's like, Troy was the big exciting battle that we should all remember. But now here's the story of the one guy,
right,
and what happened to him and his dorky little kingdom.
Yeah, and that's how Rogue One fits in. We all know the story of Luke and Vader and Anakin and, the Death Stars.
Right.
But here's the story about the guys on the ground who got the plans.
Right. We all know, we've all seen the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware. Who's the guy rowing the boat? That's this movie. Like, let's forget about Washington. Like, we know his story. Who are the people that died to
set him up to win?
And that's a great conceit. And that carries the movie. And it's a good example of how a really good idea like that can carry.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah. And I think the movie in and of itself is a little bit choppy, even at its best. But the idea really carries. The other example I thought of this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, the sort of entertainment that relies on other entertainment and is something that we just accept. In comedy, we always accept this. That's what Rachel would do. The best episodes of Friends aren't the early ones that just have jokes that anybody can get. They're the later ones. The reasons the show's beloved is because everybody fell in love with those characters. They knew these characters. And so Jennifer Aniston or David Schwimmer can just say something that in and of itself is not funny at all. And because we have history, it's hilarious. I think of, the old comedian from the early 20th century, Jack Benny. The biggest laugh he ever got is a robber comes up to him and says, "Your wallet or your life." Jack Benny pauses for a second and the robber says, "Come on." And Jack Benny says, "I'm thinking." Not, "Jake, you're not falling out of your floor on the floor laughing there." But the thing was, Jack Benny was a lovable skinflint. That was like his thing. Was he didn't like to part with money, and he'd done decades of jokes about that. And so he says, "I'm thinking," and the audience can't stop laughing for 2 or 3 minutes. And it's completely lost. If you just watched that episode of the Jack Benny Show, it would be completely lost on you. It's more or less, I know about it academically, but it's lost on me. But context is key. Context is king. They have this, they know who Jack Benny is. They bring all that. It's actually funnier than the best joke. Rachel just being
Well, it's
Rachel is
because
funnier
it's
than the
paying
best
off-
written joke.
It's because it's paying off 10 years of character setup,
Right.
right? Or however long it is.
Right.
And that is what a movie like this can do, is it can pay off 30, 40 years of setup. And that's what that Vader scene is all about. That Vader scene is all about paying off 30 or 40 years of kids on playgrounds pretending and trying to figure out how cool Vader must actually be and what it would look like for him to actually
Let loose.
let loose.
Yeah. It's kids that grew up in the 70s or 80s, and they've imagined a million times what it would look like for Darth Vader to just do his thing, and they never really got to see it. And now we're just gonna give it to him.
Yeah. It also makes this the first Star Wars movie that's not a kid's movie.
Yeah. Did you watch this one with your kids when you?
No, it's the only movie I haven't shown to my. I took my oldest son to the theater with a bunch of friends and their kids. There were much younger kids there than him, but I don't know if I'd read something or whatever. I was only brave enough to take my oldest son. I wrecked him and he didn't understand it, and I felt bad about him being there, and I haven't shown it to the rest of my kids because, everybody dies and the humor doesn't translate. There are things that are going on that are just way above kids' heads.
Which is fine. I mean, I think if you wanted to criticize the movie, I think it is legitimate to say, well, come on, guys. I mean,
this is a kid's franchise.
Those 5-year-olds are going to end up in the theater, so it would be nice if you could take that into account. As an adult, I'm kind of glad they didn't, because the movie does work for me. But I don't know. I don't want to completely brush aside the criticism of we need to take into account the fact that every parent in America is going to bring their kids to this
At least of these early things where they're just used to the idea of Star Wars is a cultural phenomenon for kids.
Right.
It's like Anakin, think of little Anakin, running around, and Jar Jar Binks. It's just like goofy Abbott and Costello slapstick stuff happening, and those are the expectations that were set for Star Wars.
Right. Now we could actually probably blame George Lucas. He's the one that sort of introduced this disconnect between, once he decided to go back and fill in the Anakin story, suddenly it was going to be like episode 1 has Jar Jar Binks and he's stepping in Bantha stuff. And then by the end, we're going to have a guy that looks like a Holocaust victim and his eyebrows have been burned off by lava and his limbs have been, there's always been this weird, ever since the prequel trilogy, there's been this weird push and pull between, is it for adults or is it for kids?
And so they took something out of the main trilogy.
Yeah.
And decided they were going to push forward adult Star Wars. It was a decision they made. It was conscious. It was, hey, we're going to do a movie. It's not a main trilogy movie, and it's not going to be a kids movie. We'll see what happens. And what happened is all the geeks loved it. I mean, I guess they did.
Yeah.
It's still a top. I mean, most people, a lot of the lists out there put it at 1 or 2.
I can only speak anecdotally here, but I feel like I talk to people and they like this movie. Adult men specifically.
Yeah, that's the vibe that I've always gotten.
This is a cool movie. And you might even talk to somebody who's a casual Star Wars fan and they're like, yeah, this is the one that, was actually for me. A little bit more than some of the other things. But do you agree with me that this movie, if we have minutes to fill on a podcast. So if we do take a step back and talk about how the movie is actually done, can we agree that it's actually not? Here's what I would say, I guess. This movie is a wonderful 20-minute movie buried within a pretty good hour length movie, buried within a mediocre 2-hour movie. And the wonderful 20-minute movie is the last 20 minutes of this movie. The death of our heroes, the final heist. Yeah. The hour is once they get in Rogue One. And that's a pretty good movie, everything going to Scarif, and that's all a good movie. The mediocrity is everything that gets us onto Rogue One is just not great.
Yeah, I think the simplest way to say it is the way that I said it before, which is you take away all of the things that make this a Star Wars movie, the lasers and the stormtroopers and the Death Star and Darth Vader. It's pretty blah, even though at the very end, it's still going to be pretty great when everything kind of comes together and everybody has their heroic moment and their part to play in this quest that's on the knife's edge of is the universe going to be doomed or not?
But I submit to you that instead of just tearing up, they could have destroyed you. Like this movie could be the most powerful maybe it is the most powerful Star Wars movie, but it could be 10 times more effective if all those characters were really set up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't have any question about that. The fact is, they gave us some cynics who end up on a suicide mission who are actually hopeful dreamers.
Right.
And they don't set that up and sell it.
No, well, if you think about a mission movie, like an Ocean's 11 or a Dirty Dozen, we're going to go to each character and we're going to spend a little bit of time, and it's going to be like, this is what George Clooney's like, and this is what Brad Pitt's like, and this is what Matt Damon does in his day-to-day life. This movie just weirdly, and this must just be the reshoot, it's like it skips that stuff, kind of. I mean, it's there, but it's really truncated, and I mean, I didn't really. I was trying to figure out like what is it? Why doesn't it quite land this first act in particular?
Well, Diego Luna's character is pretty confusing.
I mean, I guess by the end of the movie, we're supposed to know.
Why does he shoot that guy?
Yeah, that's the whole problem. There's a textbook idea. There's a.
The idea is that he's done bad things and he's willing to do bad things, but
that's a really confusing,
confusing way to do it, and to tell that story and to make you feel nervous or scared about him as a character. And then suddenly we're supposed to just accept that actually he's a hero deep down.
Well, and we never get that conflict until such time as we're told that it was always there. You know, it'd be one thing if he shot the guy and then he made a sad face, or we saw him walk into a bar and get a drink, or I don't know what the good version would be. None of those, but there's a million ways you could tell the story of. I mean, the classic is Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. The first act of that movie is setting up this guy's cynical. He's lost his way. Maybe he's still got some good buried in him, but he's going to not let the Nazis drink at the bar. We're going to get some indications, but
Solo's going to shoot first, and then he's going to be disparaging about the Force and the Jedi, and then he's going to still be there at the end, and he's going to come back and provide cover fire. And
when Diego Luna's like, when they go to, in Act 2, they go to her father, where her father is, whatever that planet's called, and he's suddenly like, Jin's down there. I care about her. It's like, why? You never gave any indication of being somebody who cared about anybody.
Or anything except completing the mission.
And we haven't seen any conflict. Like, we could have maybe seen a scene where you're like, I'm going to choose to be a jerk. We never saw you make that choice. Now you suddenly feel that way.
And then you're going to get back, and then you're going to be all cagey about everything.
Yeah. It's like you're going to do... It's like it almost works because we're so used to these cliches, the anti-hero with the heart of gold kind of thing, the Bogart character, the Dirty Harry kind of character. We're so used to that sort of thing that we kind of accept it because it's simply, okay, well, this is the part in the movie where I guess he needs to start to crack.
Yep.
But they don't really do it. They don't actually do the work of...
No, what they do is suddenly he has gone and put together a team and gives a little speech about how we all have red in our ledger and I'd like to wipe some of it out.
Yeah. And you don't really know. Same thing for Jin. You get the first scene, which is great. I love the opening scene with Krennic taking Mads Mikkelsen. That's a cool kind of Western scene. I love the fact that the bad guys park like a mile away so
I know,
so they can walk ominously.
That's pretty amazing.
I think that's awesome. I think that's the kind of thing that nerds should never nitpick because that is what a Star Wars movie should be, is iconography and silliness. Like, there's more than one part of this movie where people park far away from something simply so that they can have a dramatic
walk up.
But I love that. I love the Wild West of it all. I love the wartime child hiding. Like, it really puts you thing. I don't know if this is the time to talk about it, but I love Ben Mendelsohn as Director Krennic. I think he's
great.
No, he's
had to play that role about 5 times since then
because he knocked it out of the park. I mean, people realize, okay, this guy has like 9 different levels of sneer that he can do. So
and he's capable of using them all while also being completely emasculated in the presence of Tarkin or a Vader.
Which is wonderful. And he's got that lisp, and he was just born for this kind of role. But I just love the idea of bad guy as middle manager. It's kind of the same thing we were talking about with the heroes. Like, these are all the, these are the hobbits. This isn't the story of Aragorn. This is the story of the hobbits. Yeah. Well, the same way, this is not the story of Sauron. This is the story, this isn't the story of Hitler. This is the story of some random cleric that arranged for the trains to go to Auschwitz. I'm sorry, that's a dark example, but it's like there's a million.
It's the pirate captain who brings the men in on, from the sea for the battle for the assault on Minas Tirith or whatever.
Yeah, it's like,
how's that for a nerdy?
There's a million guys that exist somewhere in this infrastructure.
Who's behind all these pirates with massive elephants that Legolas is gonna slide down?
And this is just a guy, and he's a relatable, frustrated middle manager. He doesn't care about the Empire. He just cares about getting ahead and getting his project greenlighted and having the right, having the bosses actually take notice.
Wormtongue.
Yeah, it really is. It's Wormtongue. Wormtongue as someone who doesn't care about Middle Earth. Like, this guy is just in the machine, and he's worked hard, and thinks he deserves something.
He needs that recognition.
And the key to a great villain like that, and the thing that Mendelssohn's really good at, is I don't think he plays it. Like, Director Krennic doesn't know that Director Krennic is the villain. He just thinks that everybody's always kept him back, and this is his big shot, and he's going to impress the boss.
Yep.
And he's not doing anything particular. Star Wars has a good line in villains who just love to be evil, and I do enjoy that too.
Yeah.
But for this particular movie, it's nice to have a character who could care less about being evil. He just wants to get his promotion, get his pension.
He wants to be on top.
He wants to get on top. He wants to have the stock options, and he's really, really frustrated.
He's gotten so far, and he's so close.
Right. And then
Tarkin's going to hold him down.
And then it's wonderful that, it's wonderful poetic justice that somebody
don't
like that
choke
just
on your ambitions.
Yeah, we could maybe do without that line, but that was my brother's big hot take on the movie. He said, "How'd you like Rogue One?" Well, Darth Vader made a pun. I don't know. Okay, well, you're obviously really invested in the franchise there. But and then the fact that he's going to be someone who's blithely perpetuating the system, trying to get ahead, and then the system's going to just chew him up, and he's going to end up hoisted on his own petard. It's absolutely wonderful. He's going to be on the ground and look up as the Death Star
blows him to bits.
That's just great. That's good writing. That's good. I mean, we can complain about some of the things in the movie, but I think that's perfect. I really like that a lot.
Well, there's a lot of virtue in a lot of the performances, and you don't know how much of it, how many of the little details. It is weird how scattered the movie is, and how many little telling details are included, even in the weirdest places, or not the weirdest places, but it's like, I think it supports your theory that what's his face came back and his goal was to just like, I got to find ways to add human touches to all these people. Mm-hmm. Okay, your thing is, you got to keep repeating this prayer.
Right.
Like, that's your thing. And it's going to have to do the work of resonating really emotionally at the end when you just sort of blindly go, blindly. Ha.
Yeah.
When you go out and just walk through to your death, your heroic death, or you are a broken old man who is confused and also paranoid. But before your paranoid moments, you're going to suck on this gas mask.
Right.
And it's going to give the idea that there's something in this gas that is, maybe it's helping relieve your pain, but also it's driving you crazy.
Right.
It's making you paranoid. It's contributing to the madness here. And that's going to give you just a little bit of a sympathetic touch to otherwise pretty undeveloped character, in the movie at least.
But the thing is,
Saw Gerrera exists in both Clone Wars and Rebels.
Right, and I accept that they probably do a nice job of filling him in.
Yep.
There. But the thing is, if Gilroy was trying to add human touches, he had a real difficult problem. I think you can see the scars, because character development actually basically stops. For Jyn Erso, it stops at about 40 minutes. She flips from being cynical survivor to hope, to hopeful speech giver the second she sees her dad's little hologram. Her emotional journey is done, actually. And Diego Luna's emotional journey is done about an hour into the movie, because I've got red in my ledger and I want to get on Rogue One and I want to go on this mission. And now they're just both actually protagonists. But it means that we have to very quickly in a way that's pretty choppy, in a way that feels like it could just be its own movie, and maybe it was on the editing room floor. We've got to go on this journey with these characters where they have to go from being cynical Bogart kind of characters to being people who are Bogart at the end of Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
But Casablanca, of course, is a 2-hour movie, and it's hard to take Jen that far in 40 minutes. I mean, I think Jen in particular, like, who is she actually? We don't have the scene. We have the rebels bring her in and they say, you're this and you're this and they're this. They tell us some details about her life. But we don't really know what her perspective is on. She says some cynical things about surviving, and I think we're supposed to fill in the blanks based on what we understand about cliches.
And she has an emotional scene with Saw Gerrera where she's like, you used me and you left me behind.
But we as an audience are always playing catch up. Oh, that was her relationship with Saul. Okay, well, that would have been emotional if I'd known that. We know who she was as a girl, and then we just see her being sour and being tough, but we don't actually know, like, we don't have the Luke looking at the twin sunsets or the Anakin pouting even. We don't actually know, like, has she made her peace with not seeing her father? Does she want to see her father? She's apparently ready to flip pretty quickly into rebellions are built on hope, but... Which
is a repeat line.
Right. But who is she actually? I don't think the movie really knows, or if it did, I mean, again, you can kind of, there's no question I can ask that you can't answer.
Yeah. I can tell you who she is.
Right.
The movie gave you enough to piece it together. You do have to do that work yourself. But I mean, she's a little girl who was the daughter of a dreamer who had gotten himself in and out of a bad situation. And then she became an orphan, and she was raised by a terrorist and was a strong idealist for a while until she got left out in the cold. She just tries not to think about any of it anymore. She tries to survive. She does what it takes to survive. But deep down,
it's no problem if the rebel flag or the imperial flag is waving if you don't look up.
Yeah.
That's a nice line.
Yeah. Well, and then she has Diego Luna throws the line, rebellions are built on hope at her. And she's here and she's in all of this mess. And then suddenly there's her dad, who everyone knows is the worst traitor of all.
Right.
Saying that he loves her and he misses her. And he's done the one thing that nobody would expect, which is build the thing that was going to get built anyway, but plant a bomb, give it a fatal flaw.
Right.
So that it's vulnerable. It's possible for it to be taken down. And now there's her dad, and her dad's actually a hero, like she had always hoped and known, but had tried to not think about and had lost hope about. And now her hope and faith has been restored, and she's just...
Right.
She's ready. She's got to clear her dad's name. She's going to find him. She's going to do that. She's going to complete his mission. All of that is there.
It's all there, but and we're told that by people, Saul and her talking, or by the rebels reading her dossier. It'd be nice if we were made to feel it.
Yeah.
If we spent some time, let's see her trying to be cynical and not pay attention, and then there's a little kid that's starving. I mean, this is so cheesy, but this is the kind of thing that these movies do, and then she steals a loaf of bread and gives it to the kid, and then she sings One Jump and the guys chase her, and then she ends up in jail. And now we have a lot of information about who this character is. We've seen them, and they have that moment even. They have the little kid in the street. The little
girl in the street fight that she jumps out to protect.
But we're supposed to, I think if the filmmakers were going to defend this, they would say, well, we're making an action movie, and actually in the great tradition of Star Wars, you need to keep up, and character is action. And so we're just going to put them in this situation, and you're going to see, and you're going to figure it out on the fly. And it's like, if they did make that defense, I actually think it's a bad defense. That's not what A New Hope did. A New Hope had the binary sunset. It had Greedo comes after Han. It had these things where we're going to pause the plot, and we're going to tell you who these people are in broad, simple terms, effective, emotional terms.
But you would say, and probably have said on our other episodes, actually, it's pretty hack when they did it, and it's pretty flat, and these characters are flat all the way through, and even though they try to tell you that they're not.
Yeah, but they didn't give us the hack flat thing, and it's dumb. They should have. Instead, they just read it. They just had the character read a dossier, and then they had characters talk about it. I'd rather have them show in a cheesy way than tell. Yeah, you're always going to be able to get me on the charge that if they'd made a different movie, I'd have a different set of grumpy criticisms because Nathan's nothing if not a grumpy critic of these things. So I plead guilty, but I'm still going to criticize the movie that they made. I think cliches I always prefer when people don't use cliches, but I think cliches can be awfully handy.
Yeah.
I would compare, a cliche is like a brick, right? Like you can use boring red bricks to build an awesome house, an awesome, interesting house. But what you can't do is just have a bunch of boring red bricks and say, we built a house. No, you have to use them to build something. Yeah. And the first act of this movie in particular feels like we've just got some
big pile of bricks. And it's like, no, you need to fashion them into something. And so let's add a few more bricks, actually. That would help. Let's add the scene where we see what kind of an attitude Jen has, how much hope she actually harbors. Let's see why she got in that prison transport in the first place.
And can I give like a 1 minute feminism sucks thing? I know this is a boring point for Sanity people, but I think it makes the movie worse. Whatever, feminism is such a boring thing to pick on these days because it's everywhere. But I actually think if she had a little bit more vulnerability, she would be more interesting. The fact that she can just get out of those scrapes by beating up men that are twice her size actually takes a little bit of drama out of the movie. If Diego Luna had to be the tough guy and she had to survive by her wits, I actually think that's that adds interest and color to...
Wait, but who does she actually beat up? She doesn't actually fight anybody.
Yeah, really. She does. There's a couple guys on the transport, like when she's in jail, before they even bust her out.
Yeah, but they're unsuspecting.
And then there's in Jeddah, there's a scene where there's kind of the classic, like she's going to grab a stick and knock over a bunch of stormtroopers or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But I was thinking about what they should have done. And I was trying to think like who the ideal feminine action person would be. And I actually think while she's a little bit annoying, a little bratty, Marion from Raiders of the Lost Ark is a good template for these kinds of characters. Because Marion can't, besides out drinking that guy at the very beginning, which is ridiculous, Marion can't do things that Marion wouldn't be able to do. But she's plucky and she's tough and she's smart. So she's going to lure the guy in and hit him with the
frying pan.
With the frying pan. And she's going to try and seduce the French guy. And she's going to use everything that she has in an intelligent, effective way. She's not some bimbo that's just waiting for Indiana Jones to rescue her all the time. She's not the lady from Temple of Doom.
She's just annoying you with her scream.
But
Indy!
But she has a certain amount of vulnerability as a woman. Like she can just be picked up by the bad guys and tossed around. And so that actually adds interest and suspense to the story because Indiana Jones has to protect her, but not just that. She has to think on her feet and be smarter than the guys that she can't just beat up. I think that would be good for Jen, and it would just work better for this actress who looks like a pixie doll and has these big eyes, and I just don't. It was dumb. True or false?
True.
Yay. What else do you want to say about, I guess we basically talked our way through Act 1 of this movie. I don't understand why Saul Guerrera's in the movie. Did you like anything to do with him? It just felt weird. Does it work with Clone Wars? It's like, if you know about Saul Guerrera, does it all make sense and is awesome?
I don't know that it's awesome. It's we've seen him on this trajectory before kind of thing. So it makes sense that that's where he ends. He was right.
Right, that what?
The thing about Saul Guerrera is that Saul Guerrera always saw the Republic and the Rebel Alliance. He saw their corruptions and he saw their flaws and he saw their weaknesses. Problem is that he couldn't stop seeing the corruption and the flaws and the weaknesses. So everybody was a bad guy who wasn't Saul Guerrera and on Saul Guerrera's team. You know, that made him, in some ways, he is kind of a parallel to Anakin in that now he just doesn't believe that the Jedi aren't just pawns. He doesn't believe that. So, but what happens to Saul? Saul's just like, stay out. Leave me in my planet alone. We're going to be independent, whatever. But Saul just keeps kind of going down this road. And because he sees the Republic as corrupt, and then after that, the Rebel Alliance is corrupt and won't unite with the Rebel Alliance, he just ends up, fighting and subverting both. which doesn't win him any friends.
Well, why would anybody want to be the friend with this weirdo with his gas mask and his psycho squids and his... I guess we're seeing the end of...
That's the very end. That's the very end. Before that, he was a compelling, charismatic leader. If you were the kind of person who had been burned by both sides, or could see from the beginning, or had felt... Because there are all these planets out there that actually the Republic had used as pawns, and, it was all this, it was just complicated.
Right.
It wasn't light versus dark, good versus evil, actually. Palpatine was puppeteering it all, and the Jedi were pawns in his hand, and there were heroes on both sides, as
the great title crawl says. Yeah.
And that means that there were villains on both sides as well. And Guerrero was not having any of it from the beginning, and he ended up, getting more and more pragmatic. And when his sister died, it was a problem. It's a thing that happened, and that pushed him. And so you have these kinds of parallels with Anakin's story and Anakin's development, but by the end, you can't trust anybody except yourself.
Yeah.
And you're going to die alone.
Well, he was tired of running, so he decided to commit movie suicide by just standing there and...
Being engulfed.
Yep. Do you think... I don't know, I'm tempted to say that at least the way they did it in this particular movie, it just took things too far into the direction of shades of gray. I mean, this is still a Star Wars movie after all, and having all the Alliance bicker and there being no clear hero besides maybe Mon Mothma and maybe Bail Organa, but we don't get to spend a lot of time with him. I wish he was more of a prime mover in those debate scenes. And then to have Saw Gerrera be so obviously Middle Eastern terrorist psycho guy is pretty dark for a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it has its place. Those... Star Wars deals in big grotesques in types, and I think that making Saw Gerrera another grotesque that throws a little layer of complexity to our new adult Star Wars film doesn't do that much harm. It's not like it's adding too many shades of gray, really. It just shows, hey, things are just slightly more complex than they were. Let me throw in a grotesque stereotype of how this works. And that is the way that things work. There is always the guy who is never satisfied with anyone or anything but himself, and can be a critic of even the best parts of the rebellion. And what he does is he ends up isolating himself because he can't stop firing on the good guys as well as the bad guys. And all of his efforts to correct the abuses of the system and the abuses of the correctors, he sets himself up essentially as the only guy who gets it, and so it's his way or no way.
Folks, let's not forget that Jake's a pastor right now, and it really wouldn't surprise me at all if he had people that end up leaving churches in his mind as he talks about some of this.
No.
And nobody ever becomes so angry and stodgy in their course correction, and they suddenly then accuse all the pastors of not going far enough and of...
Yep.
That never happens.
Never happens.
So do you think that the Saw Gerrera part of the movie works? I can't say that it really works for me as someone who's divorced from the larger Saw Gerrera mythology. And it feels like it kind of maybe crosses a line into like, you must watch the cartoons that Star Wars has never quite crossed.
No, I don't think that you must watch the cartoons to get anything. I don't think the cartoons bring that much to the end of Saw Gerrera there. I think it's a nice little hat tip. He's just another character that is there, and if you know, you know. It's like they put the Ghost and Chopper and they paged General Syndulla, and those are all three great Easter eggs for Star Wars Rebels, the cartoon show. That's the one that, my kids are going to be like, that's the Ghost.
Right.
That's Chopper. Did you hear them call General Syndulla? No, we didn't. Actually, Dad would have had to point that one out because they weren't paying attention to background noise. But those are the things that are going to get them excited. It's like this latest trailer for Rise of Skywalker. I played it for the kids once. Then I played it a second time, and I just hit pause on the fleet scene. And the Millennium Falcon's right up there up front. To say, hey, kids, you notice anything? And they're like, the Millennium Falcon, what? And almost immediately, one of my sons just yells and runs over and he points to a ship that looks like the Ghost from Rebels. And then everybody goes nuts. Like, what? I'm so excited about this movie now. Like, that's the thing that my kids are really excited about. It's probably the first time they've been excited about The Rise of Skywalker, because the fact is they don't care about the new trilogy at all.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
they never, they do not want to watch those movies. And when we get to them and I try to watch them as a family, they're going to be like, no, can we watch something else? And I'm going to have to watch those movies by myself or force them on my kids.
That's pretty damning.
I think it's pretty damning. Yeah, but they're excited about Rise of Skywalker now. But again, it's not because of
a ship.
It's because there was a ship that they saw that they recognized from
the thing that they're actually excited about.
The thing that they actually love, which is Rebels, the cartoon show, which has, been done for a couple years now. So, yeah, let that say whatever it should say.
I bet Rebels has setups and payoffs and some of the things that I've been complaining about, or that we've been complaining about Rogue One here. They probably have the cliche where we set up who the character is and how they feel about things and how we're supposed to feel about them. And
well, they can do, the other thing that they can do is they can do that over seasons.
Yeah, which is nice.
Rogue
One actually does feel like it was condensed from either a longer movie or, like a TV show or something like that. Like you could see this being an 8 episode. First we meet Jin, then we have the episode where we meet, what's his face, Cassian. And then
that's what they've said about, is the case with the Obi-Wan spinoff.
Mm-hmm.
It was always going to be a movie called Kenobi, and then they just decided, let's just chill with the movies because we suck at them.
Yeah. Well,
and let's try this new direction.
I like long form stuff. I would have loved Rogue One if we had the time to get to know her relationship with Saw a little bit more and to see some of it and to see who Cassian. I mean, I don't get me wrong, folks. I really like
what
Rogue
would have
One.
been what would have been cool is if we had been given just these characters and we got to follow them, and the series finale was we suddenly realized the whole point of this story has been leading up to these are the people that died stealing the Death Star plans.
That's such a great story.
And you could spend 3 seasons telling the story of all these people with no idea where it was headed until the final arc.
I love that.
That would be super cool. And it would not surprise me at all if that's what The Mandalorian does.
Yeah. Well, that'd be smart and cool.
If it does something like that, I think that could be really neat and really fun.
Yeah, if they find a way to actually successfully tie it into the larger mythos.
Oh, they will. There's a reason why they brought Dave Filoni out of the
animation division.
Out of leading the animation, and canceled Resistance and put him on Mandalorian with Jon Favreau. And that's why. He is the master of tying it all together and making it all fit and feel part of the universe, and the mythos is laced through it all. It's just, he's really good at that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what's...
Which, by the way, Mandalorian full trailer reaction in one sentence.
I am no less or no more excited about it than I was after the first trailer.
I think my one sentence would be, they've got money.
And they're putting it in it.
Yep.
They believe in this.
And by the way, cool. I'm glad that they have money. I'm excited that every episode will have vistas and creatures and feel like Star Wars. I bet there's an episode or two that take place in a room or in a space or in a
spaceship.
Yeah, in the bottle episodes, as they call them. The famous Breaking Bad, where we got to catch the fly episode because our budget requires us to be clever. And I love the fly episode of Breaking Bad, and I think it's fun that they ran out of money and had to do a dumb
Isn't
fly
that Ryan
episode.
Johnson?
What's that?
Isn't that Ryan Johnson?
That is Ryan Johnson, yeah. The great Ryan Johnson, whose work we will have more opportunity to talk about very soon. So I think we've pretty thoroughly covered Act 1 of Rogue One. Anything else to say about that? I don't think so.
No, not really. It's got some good cinematography, Act 1 does.
Yeah.
Some of the best cinematography of the film up until the final act.
And it's all about being on the ground with the characters. It's about, it's obvious. It didn't take a brain scientist to come up with this, but let's do handheld documentary
brain
style.
scientist.
Yeah, it didn't take a brain
As
scientist.
opposed to a rocket surgeon.
As opposed to a rocket surgeon. I think they got some brain scientists together. We're just going to do documentary. We're going to do, it's Saving Private Ryan vis-a-vis Star Wars. It's
a little bit of D-Day there, a little bit of Pacific Theater, a little bit of...
Yeah, but it's great. It's an obvious great idea that...
Even the transport, even the plane, when it opens up, is going to look like opening up on D-Day, the duck boats or whatever.
Yeah, those images are still just burned into our brains in a way that just makes them powerful today. How many generations are we removed from the greatest generation now? But, your kids have probably still, one way or another, seen enough of that stuff.
Yeah, I think you asked me on the last episode, what is it about World War II iconography?
Yeah.
Well,
good versus evil. Bunch of heroes stood up to pretty bad villains and
involved the whole world. They killed millions and millions of people and were gonna win, and felt like maybe evil finally was gonna win. And
well, that's the war. That's the clearly defined war and that's the war that our movie. Like the last act is Pacific Theater, World War II, but the first act is like Afghanistan, which is a very, it's like, and it's properly so because we're talking murky. We're not sure who the good guys are. It's that kind of iconography. It's modern war iconography. And then we go into older war iconography, which is pretty smart. And the fun thing about Star Wars is you can be like, on this planet, we do this kind of iconography. And on this planet, this is the World War II planet. This is the Afghanistan, Iraq planet. Which is smart. It feels so inevitable, but at a certain point, somebody made a smart decision. Like the desert planet is the one where everything feels off balance and weird, and where the terrorists are. I mean, again, didn't probably take a brain scientist to figure that out, but it taps into things without even having to say them. Then you got Act 2. I don't even know what Act 2. Then you got everything that leads up to the heist. You got her dad getting blown up and all that stuff. Sad. Suddenly the characters are hopeful and likable and a team. Mm-hmm. And suddenly we're in the middle of a pretty good movie, even though we didn't have a lot of the setup for it. Mm-hmm. And suddenly Jen's giving inspiring speeches. I really think if I was going to do this movie, I would just make her more hopeful from the very beginning, one way or another. Make her the dreamer and make Diego Luna the cynic, and then you have two types that can kind of play off or something. Just make them different. Don't make them both like we're cynical and
in our own way.
And Diego's got a little bit more red in his ledger. I understand that the conceit of the movie is that everybody was beautifully broken and they all needed to come together in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Even K2SO was beautifully broken. Reprogrammed Imperial droid.
Funny droid, by the way.
One of the best.
Is there a better droid in Star Wars than K2SO?
I mean, people aren't going to let you have that over R2.
Yeah, but I'm an adult and it's a free country and the people can eat bantha fodder as far as I'm concerned. K2SO is a funnier.
He's funny.
More awesome, cooler droid.
And he's got an awesome heroic death.
He's got a great death. And one of his lines made me LOL yesterday. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I mean, I think I knew it before. I'd seen the movie, but it got me. I don't know.
What line was it?
Watching it by myself. I think it was, I'm with you, Jin. Diego Luna says I have to.
Yeah. Why can't we remember that guy's name? But Cassian.
Yeah, Cassian.
Cassian says I have to.
Yeah, I'll be behind you all the way, Jin. Cassian says I have to. Yeah. That's really funny.
A couple of good lines.
Yeah, that's a great joke. It's got a setup. It's got a payoff. I love jokes like that. He's just he's a wonderful droid, and you love him. And
that is the thing that you can do with droids is you can credibly make them really colorfully bent in one very specific direction.
Yes.
Because they're just a droid.
Yeah.
They don't have to be. They're not human, so they get to be.
Yeah. I will say a little bit Drax the Destroyer there, guys. We've seen Guardians. We know where you're cribbing from. The character that just says
is the timetable.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Let's find out, folks. I'm not going to cut it out.
Okay, you look at Guardians, and I'll look at Rogue One.
Guardians of the Galaxy is 2014.
It's 2016 is Rogue One, so yeah.
Yeah, those screenwriters saw their Guardians of the Galaxy, and they thought it would be funny to have a character that said, we're all going to die. They just said the obvious thing, but it works. Steal from the best. Just
Word.
don't do it again in Solo and have another character that does that, which Solo had some lame Drax kind of character too, didn't it?
Solo had the sex bot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Ugh.
Super gross.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Gross. She's the worst. There are things not to be meta about, guys. The fact that the droids exist kind of in the space that slaves occupy in old, like, Civil War movies and stuff, in old racist horribles, is a really smart thing about Star Wars. And if you put a button on it, then you're going to risk taking it away from people and ruining what's good about the droids. So let's just not think about it too much. So, yeah, K2SO. We haven't talked about Donnie Yen and his buddy.
I thought they were just they ended up bringing nice color to the film, and again it was that really useful, like, Donnie Yen is the true believer. I am one with the Force is with me. I'm one with the Force is with me, which is a fun fact that you get from the film. That is a distorted mantra from way back in the day.
Nice. That's cool.
So it's not even...
He's not getting it right?
He's not getting it right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's just, just one more little wrinkle and touch that Dave Filoni's going to think to throw in there.
That's great.
And he always does that sort of thing in a retcon sort of way, but he did that and it worked. And
there you go.
Cool. Or there's also the possibility that it's a separate... There are all kinds of possibilities. The Guardians of the Wills, maybe they follow a separate tradition that's split, and the mantra...
But I love the idea that
it's like,
he's getting it wrong. Imagine if there was persecution.
Or he's Eastern Orthodox and we're Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
It
taps into...
And the church split 1,000 years ago, or, whatever. It taps into that kind of that's cool. And then his buddy was like, with his awesome machine gun.
Howitzer thing, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool that he has that. And it's cool that we also know that he was more of a true believer than Donnie Yen, but stuff happened and forget that.
Those guys, by the way, cliched, maybe in another universe, Nathan makes fun of it, but that is effective storytelling shorthand.
That's good use of cliches.
That's good use of cliches, and it's good, quick sketching of characters.
Yeah, K2SO, Donnie Yen, and Machine Gun Man are all, I think, really great uses of cliched characters.
Donnie Yen's going to sit there like a monk. He's going to say some stuff about how we need to have faith.
He's going to get his "I'm blind" joke in. Ha.
Oh, that's great. And that was an ad lib by Donnie Yen.
Was it?
Yeah. I'm blind. Are you kidding me? Which is probably the big laugh of the movie. But that's the scene that we don't get with Jin, is the scene that just tells you, okay, who's this character? So Donnie Yen, he's going to walk out. He's going to be like, I am blind. And yet we're suddenly going to get, okay, this is a guy, and his thing is he has faith.
And he trusts the Force, and it hasn't let him down yet. He's no Jedi, but he's something else.
And we get to see that through the medium of awesome martial arts scene. Jin got some things kind of like that, but we were told who she was instead of just getting the one scene where here's the character and this is her thing. She's a cynic with a heart of gold, or or Diego Luna. Here's his thing. He feels bad, but he also has to do these things.
That is what that battle scene was supposed to do for both Jin and Diego Luna. What happens with Jin? Jin goes and saves the little girl. What happens with Diego Luna? He's the one who shoots one of Saw Gerrera's guys in order to keep the thing from blowing up, in order to keep the thing from happening, that whatever. He's got his mission, and everybody's a target that's in the way of his mission.
That's good. I mean, it's all there. It just could have been clearer and better, and it works. Like, it works. The movie wouldn't pay off at the end the way it does if you didn't basically buy into this stuff. So we got those guys. Great little setup. Great little payoff. Donnie Yen's going to walk through the lasers at the end and get the switch to do the thing, to do the MacGuffin thing. And then he's going to get a shot, and his friend is going to say the mantra and get blown up, and we'll all cry, and it'll be great.
Okay, so he dies, it's paid off, then we just kind of go through and give everybody their one by one death payoff. We give Diego Luna a fake death.
Which you can figure out through the art of having seen a movie before. I like the pilot, actually. I think the
pilot's got a good...
He's got a good, like, I think the movie done him a little dirty, because, again, let's set him up, because the actor's so naturally sympathetic, and he brings a lot to the role, but we don't really know exactly who he is, except for the guy that was mistreated by Saw Gerrera. Well, and he says that stuff like, "This is for you, Galen," and it's like, I don't need to see a scene between him and Galen, but if I could just have a little 30 seconds at the beginning in Act 1 to say, like, this guy really believed, had to sacrifice, it could be made that much more potent. But then you got Act 2, and then you go into Act 3, they get back to the rebel base. Does it take away, this is kind of the same question I was asking with Saw Gerrera, does it take away from the rebels to see them so disunited and stupid and bickering, and does that take something away from New Hope or add something to New Hope?
No, it adds something to New, because what I think happens, and this is part of the point of actually the show Rebels, is you have these various cells of people who at various places or points are rebelling against the Empire, but they're not allied. It's not the Rebel Alliance yet. It's just these assorted people who have just had enough and are essentially acting as terrorists.
Right.
But they're Robin Hoods. That's what the people that we follow in the show Star Wars Rebels, they're just Robin Hoods. Mm-hmm. And it's a former Jedi and a Jedi in training and these other people that they've had various things taken away from them, and they're going to go out, they're going to protect people, they're going to undermine the Empire here and there in little places. Part of the work is, can we form an alliance and can we trust each other, and who's going to lead it, and why would we let the leaders of the fallen Republic, like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, why would we let them be the ones in charge? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that, I don't think it takes anything away, because I think what happens actually by the end of the movie is, hey, wait a minute. I mean, there's a way to watch this movie that says Rogue One didn't just, not the movie, but the team, didn't just secure the Death Star plans. What they did was the thing that pulled everybody together and gave them all the collective unity and mission that they needed. Like before it was, how do we undermine here? How do we do that? How do we do this? Oh, I don't know. We can pull this off. I don't know. We can do that. I don't know. Whatever. They go off. They steal the plans. Everybody's like, wait a minute. They're stealing the plans. Let's just go all in. They all go in. General Radis leads the way. He's got a ship named after him that I'm pretty sure that the Radis is what Jurassic Park lady flies through.
Oh, well, there you go.
I think.
It's like poetry.
Yeah, it echoes. It rhymes.
Yep.
So I don't know. I mean, I think, again, they didn't do a good job of telling that aspect of the story, but...
It's such a powerful thing, though. The idea that when the guy runs up to Princess Leia at the end and hands her the thing, and she says, hope, that's not the only hope that these people brought. It's actually just the hope of the rebellion writ large.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a Star Wars movie that's not more fun to talk about than to actually watch for me. Because it's like, these are really powerful things I can make myself excited. And this is a good movie. Again, this is probably my favorite Star Wars movie. I don't know.
It's the only one that I've bought, and it's the only one. The fact is, if I'm going to have fun with a movie, I'm not going to watch a Star Wars movie.
Right.
But if there were a Star Wars movie that I would pop in on a Friday night by myself, because my wife's away at a women's event or something, or hanging out, I don't know what, Rogue One's going to be the one Star Wars movie that I pop in. I will not watch one of those movies without my kids.
Right.
Not one of them. Unless I have to do it for this show.
Right.
But Rogue One, I can see every few years saying, man, that was cool. Man, that was beautifully shot. Man, I want to have that feeling evoked again of living in this world. Man, I want to see Vader take those guys out in the hallway. Like, okay.
This is maybe horrible, but it reminds me, like every year on Veterans Day or the 4th of July, my dad would turn on the movie Gettysburg or something like that, and we'd all watch it, and we'd like be in tears and remember the people who had died for us. Rogue One really kind of actually does that.
It has
that feeling like let's turn this on once a year and remember the people that died to take down the Galactic Empire.
Yeah, exactly. It does it very much and very intentionally, as we've pointed out. It plays like a World War II movie on purpose.
Right. Well, and I mean, if I can defend myself a little bit and yourself and everybody who feels that way, we do have, I mean, Star Wars has been around for 40 years. It's been around for longer than you and I have. It's been around our whole lives. We've had 35, ish years of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And so to make a movie about these are the people who made it possible for this thing to exist that you love. I mean, it's a very meta, weird thing to try and wrap your head around, but it's like Jyn Erso died so that you and I could have Star Wars, Jake. And I'm sorry, but that does mean something. Like, it's in some meta, stupid, dorky way. I'm not saying it actually means something, but I'm saying it does evoke the feeling of meaning in a way that's very entertaining and powerful. So I guess we're on Act 3.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's all that much I have to say about
Everybody dies.
Everybody dies. That's great.
It's cathartic.
And I just, sitting in a theater, get more and more excited because it's like, oh, they didn't pull their punch there. Oh, they didn't pull their punch there. Oh, I think they're going to do it. Oh, they did it. The suits were the one the story is that Gareth Edwards, whoever broke this story, they lived because they just thought they had to. And Kathleen Kennedy and her brain trust, to their credit, said, this doesn't make any sense that they should die. It'll be a better movie. So thank you, cigar chomping evil Star Wars producers, for making at least one
good decision.
And they said put Vader in the end. So
another good decision.
That's
yay.
Maybe that's the last thing we have to talk about. Vader in the end. Good. Cool. Pretty transparently fan service.
Yep.
And I don't think either one of us cares at all.
That's what do you want in us? Listen, if the only person that can possibly save this new trilogy is J.J. Abrams and the
only way he can do it is by
pulling out all the fans. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Use the fan service, JJ. Right. Pull out all the stops.
I am one with the fan service.
The fan service is with me.
I mean, really, honestly.
Save us, JJ fan service.
You are our only hope. Tap into the stuff that we used to like, because you haven't done any work to make anything new that we're going to like. And okay, let's live with that. Let's just tap into the old stuff and do it.
Call it all back, man.
Mm-hmm. Call it all back.
Give us just rip off like we already predicted. Rip off Rowling's Harry Potter series. Give us the Deathly Hallows. Let's go on a Horcrux quest. Let's figure it out. And then let's have a portal scene at the end where all our Force ghosts come out and, the music plays and Doctor Strange is there opening it all up and the ghosts come out and Spider-Man swings through and then let's take down Palpatine once and for all.
Avengers Endgame.
And bring balance to the Force.
The more I think about it, the more I don't even like that movie, but it gives you the one thing that you need, which is it's all our heroes. Yay! And Star Wars Rise of Skywalker.
Let's take the chosen one and let's kill him.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's let him die, bringing down Thanos.
Yep, that's it.
That's
the movie
what
wins.
You need.
It did the bare minimum thing that it needed to do, and it did it okay. That's all Rise of Skywalker needs to do. And I've seen articles by nerds who say, do not bring back Hayden Christensen. We hate Anakin.
False.
You
lose.
Yeah.
I award you 0 points.
Yes.
You do not understand Star Wars. I don't care what you think about it.
Right.
If you don't understand that Hayden Christensen's Anakin is Star Wars.
You are 0 with the Force, my friend.
You have, you're like
Director Krennic.
Yeah, that's what you're like.
You just want to use Star Wars to like get ahead or something like that.
And you know what's going to happen is you're going to get blown up by the Death Star.
Yeah.
While you're trying to protect it.
Right.
You lose.
Yeah, you lose.
Listen.
That is a good metaphor, actually. You're going to like try and cling on to Star Wars and it will destroy you. Yeah, just let it be Star Wars,
Let it be Star Wars. It is the story of Anakin.
Yeah.
Anakin as represented by Hayden Christensen. That is just the way it is. Get over it.
Accept it. 5 stages of grief. You should be on stage 5, acceptance.
Yeah. Embrace it. Learn to love it. Stop worrying and love the bomb.
Yeah.
For goodness sake.
What would Yoda say? Yoda would tell you to accept the inevitable, to be at peace.
I'm going to come back and I'm just going to remind you of the fact that everything in Star Wars is about Anakin until this new trilogy. Absolutely everything. And for goodness sake.
Even Rogue One gets its potency from being about, well, here's the janitor that cleaned up so that Anakin could do his thing.
Exactly.
The whole point of this movie is that it's about Anakin, the Skywalker saga, by being conspicuously not about the Skywalker saga. You know what I mean? It's like George Washington had to cross the Delaware, so here's the guy that rowed the boat.
at the end of the day, Anakin throws the Emperor down the shaft.
Mm-hmm.
He saves the day. He dies. All of my kids cry when he dies because they're not mourning Darth Vader. They know the man beneath the mask. And then when his Force Ghost shows up, they lose it because they understand what you have failed to understand because they have embraced all of Star Wars and you haven't. And so
it's around them. It binds them.
holds them together.
Luminous beings are they.
The original trilogy, it's about Luke and Vader. When you put in the prequel trilogy, it becomes that much more about Anakin. When you go back and do 7 seasons of Clone Wars, or 6.5 seasons of Clone Wars, or whatever it actually was, of 20-something episode seasons that are all centered around Anakin Skywalker and are telling the story of Anakin Skywalker going from the greatest hero ever and most powerful Jedi of all time to fallen Jedi. And when you come back in Rebels and you cannot stop circling around the fact that Vader is here.
Mm-hmm.
Vader is the force to still be reckoned with. And nobody can quite do it. And you have to bring back Ahsoka Tano from Clone Wars.
And even Rogue One, which is about the janitor that cleaned up, whose shadow is going to loom over the whole thing. And why are you going to pay to see the movie more than once in theaters?
It's all about Vader.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about Anakin Skywalker, all of it. And so if this movie doesn't come back, I mean, it's bringing back Palpatine. If it doesn't come back and make this story of Anakin Skywalker's final triumph and Anakin bringing balance to the Force one way or another.
Then lost have we, and into exile must we go.
Yeah. Or go we must.
Or go we must, yeah. I don't know.
I don't know what he actually says either.
You have kids, you probably got it right. I don't have to watch those dumb things as much as you do. Yeah, agreed. Actually, we'll circle back to that in a second. Any final thoughts on Rogue One as a movie? Let me just reiterate, it is a wonderful 20-minute movie. Even if you're going with my theory that the whole thing is kind of choppy, that final chunk is great.
Yeah.
And it shows you what a great chunk can do for a movie, especially if it's the climactic chunk. Like even the staunchest Rogue One apologist, I think, would say it gets better as it goes, and having that final stuff hit the way it does is...
I was contemplating a Goonies joke, but decided against it. I just want everybody to know that.
What would the Goonies joke have been?
Well, Chunk is...
Oh, of course. I've actually never seen the Goonies, so I say of course as if I know the Goonies. But
well, Chunk's just a character in the Goonies, and so the way that you're talking about every movie has a good chunk, and you know,
Goonies has the best little chunk of them all. There you go. I think you should have gone for it. I'm disappointed.
I don't think it would have paid off.
Yeah,
there wasn't really.
You never know. No risk, no reward.
All right.
Sometimes you got to lift that.
I am one with the Force. The Force is with me.
Exactly.
I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me.
That's Rogue One. It's a quality movie, and also interestingly taken as an artifact in and of itself. Not a good movie at all.
Yeah.
I do submit to you. You unplug this from Star Wars, you don't have a movie. Like, this is like Aragon or something like that. It's this dumb fantasy thing that you don't care about. But because it bears the Star Wars weight, that's not a criticism, though. It knows it bears the Star Wars weight, it bears it well, and it does interesting things with it. So very quickly, we were just talking about Rise of Skywalker. I figure we should do a quick check-in while we're here. Yeah. Is there anything else that we want to say? Did the trailer, I don't think we've ever done like a trailer reaction, and I don't know that I have that much to say about it, but is there anything else we need to...
I mean, it's worth noting that my son watched the latest trailer and saw that moment where Rey and Kylo Ren are attacking this pillar-looking thing together, and Rey's holding this weird dagger thing. And he immediately said, "Is that like Vader's ashes and stuff? I bet it holds the spirit of Palpatine in it," or something like that.
Right.
Which was our prediction from before. So that kind of discouraged me that, like, okay, my 11-year-old son has picked up on this idea. Surely it's misdirection. But
I don't know. I'm not convinced that Peter wouldn't have figured out Force Awakens, and JJ did everything predictable there.
Fair. Very fair. So yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot new to add. I think from the trailer, we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
Trying to remember. It's been a while since I've seen it.
I don't know. The characters go places and do things, and
and
we see some guy ride a space horse or something like that.
Yep, those space horses that they freed, and
was that one of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't you remember we had that whole scene where we had to free the horses because we were being all...
I'm sure glad we made him pay, Rose.
Now we're riding those horses into... We're just bringing it all back.
Bringing it all back.
Riding those horses on top of a Star Destroyer or something like that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Yay.
I don't know. I wish I liked these new characters. I wish I was actually excited to see Poe and
invested in
Finn and Rey,
yeah.
and I would have been after if Force Awakens was a fine introduction to them. But we'll get to Last Jedi soon enough. Mandalorian trailer, we said.
Oh man. Well, yeah, that second trailer didn't add much to it, but that is, what's going to be funny is when everyone comes away from 2019 thinking the coolest Star Wars thing that's ever happened is The Mandalorian, not the finale of the Skywalker saga, which is what's going to happen.
Yeah, probably.
It's what's going to happen. I think JJ is going to do a great job of uniting the fans and redeeming Last Jedi and making it all feel good. But at the end of the day...
Last Jedi didn't leave him much to work with.
At the end of the day, The Mandalorian is going to stand in place in everybody's minds as the good Star Wars storytelling.
So what you're probably actually arguing is that Star Wars is moving fairly permanently to the small screen. That's where the actual Star Wars that people like is going to live and breathe. And the movies, insofar as people like them, will be extensions of the TV shows.
That's what I think. I think
we'll start to get the Ahsoka Tano movie and things like that.
I think that what's going to happen, there may just be new characters that are developed. I mean, not to be a fanboy, but I think that the Star Wars mantle clearly rests on Dave Filoni's shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And I trust him to tell good Star Wars stories because he's the only person who's ever told good Star Wars stories.
Yeah, I still don't trust. Well, I don't know. We'll see. Well, it'll be interesting to see. Last Jedi, I think, or not Last Jedi. Well, Rise of Skywalker will tell us a lot. Did Kathleen Kennedy learn anything from Last Jedi? I tend to suspect she did not. But if she learned that people aren't ready for us to politicize these things, as people still kind of want a good old fashioned story if we're going to make lots of money.
They broke the ice. They did the thing. They got the praise that they wanted. Now they can come back and do an old fashioned story and decide, do they really want to let Rian Johnson off the chain? They've already canned the Game of Thrones guys.
Yeah, which wasn't a big surprise.
Yeah, I think we're going to live on Disney Plus for a while and figure out that stuff.
That's what I would do if I were them.
And then let those stories emerge and let those worlds
let anticipation actually... The chance we've got is to go away for a while and make the next movie
like
into
Obi-Wan
an
on
event.
Tatooine.
Yeah. And even if there's TV shows, you can still build up anticipation. So whatever the next movie after Rise of Skywalker, that'll actually be one of the important ones.
Well, and honestly, what may happen is they may be able to get so prestige-y in the Disney Plus TV world that in some ways a movie might end up being a letdown.
Mm-hmm. I think that is what will happen, but it's not what the corporate suits want to happen because they stand to profit if they can actually get people to go to the theater.
Absolutely.
And make $1 billion on one of those event movies.
Yeah.
And so
what will probably, the smart thing to do would be not to build your event movies out of your TV world.
Mm-hmm.
What it would be is, let's tap out this TV world and then let's go back to the old Republic, or let's go forward and create a new thing, have a new trilogy like they've talked about.
Well, so Marvel...
And then let's go and fill that out with TV.
Marvel kind of tried that tactic, and it may be that it's a good tactic and their execution just sucked, but they kind of failed at it because they had their Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing that nobody cared about and some TV shows.
Agent Carter.
None of those things were knock it out of the ballpark successes. They had their fans, and they still have their fans. And then then if you wanted to see Robert Downey Jr., you're going to pay money and go to the theater, you jerk.
Yep.
So that was kind of their thing, and you can understand why they would do that. But it seems like now it's like, we're going to get Jeremy Renner. We're going to get Wanda. We're going to get... We're still not... Robert Downey Jr. probably still never appearing on a TV show.
Unless it's a voice cameo as like an AI or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, they may do things like that, but probably maybe like Doctor Strange, maybe we have to pay to see Doctor Strange. In other words, our 2 or 3 biggest stars, you still got to pay for. But that might not be enough to sustain those movies as event movies. Like,
yeah.
Especially without somebody of the caliber of Robert Downey Jr.
Well, I mean, I think what they did do, I mean, they know who their top tier guy. We're not going to see Tom Holland anywhere but on the big screen. We're not going to see Chadwick Boseman anywhere but on the big screen.
Right.
And the first time we see Wolverine or Mr. Fantastic will be on the big screen. And so basically all they've done is decide, now that we've retired these characters, let's keep making money off of them.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I'd be interested to see somebody actually try the model, and maybe Star Wars will go this direction of we're going to do everything on both media. The big screen will just be the payoff. It will be Avengers Endgame, but the TV shows will in fact be the Marvel movies.
We have a show called Jyn Erso or whatever.
And then Rogue One, if you want to find out the exciting conclusion to Jyn Erso's story.
The finale of that show is actually, you go pay to see it in the theater.
And that paradigm has worked kind of for things like Star Trek. Things like Star Trek and X-Files and Downton Abbey. There are things that have moved in between TV and movies, but it's always been pretty bifurcated. Like the TV era is done. Now it's time for the movie era. Although X-Files, I think they just kind of threw a random movie in there or two.
Yeah.
But to see a franchise actually try and just live in both worlds would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
I don't know. They probably have my money either way. All right, Jake, any more thoughts about Rogue One, Star Wars, State of the Star Wars, predictions, Mandalorian, anything at all?
Nope.
Cool. Sanity at the Movies, produced by me, executive produced by Jake and me. Until next time, I will go to patreon.com/Sound of Sanity to support us. And until next time,
rebellions are built on hope.
They are.